everybody, welcome back to Project Happy Home. For those of you who are new here, I'm Tanya, a doctor, lawyer turned homeschool mom of 3 kids ages 10, 7, and 5. If you're interested in videos about secular homeschooling, raising a child with ADHD, and living a more essentialist lifestyle, you have come to the right place, so be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. In today's video, I am so happy to be collaborating with my friend Joy again, and we are actually trying to do a split screen interview for the very first time. And hopefully it will go well because the first time it didn't, but being essentialist, we built in extra time. So here we are today to re-record this for you. And I'm gonna send it over to Joy so that she can introduce herself.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us. This is the last video that we're doing in our Essentialism series. This is video number 4, so if you missed the first 3, make sure and check those out. We are going to talk about the last part of this book. My name is Joy and I have 3 kids. They are 13, 11, and 9. And I have been doing classical homeschooling since the beginning, basically, with my oldest. And that's it. That's all I got for my intro. It's not nearly as polished as Tanya's, but I love it. So we're going to just dive right in to the 4th section of this book, which is talking about execution, which is perfect because you now know all about it. And now how does it actually play out in our daily life? So the first topic for discussion is the buffer. So Tanya, let's talk a little bit about the buffer.
So I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with the word buffer, and basically, you know, that idea of buffer is putting a barrier between you and whatever can harm you, right? So like when we have a buffer zone by the side of a road, it's so that, you know, things don't harm whatever's on the road or vice versa. Like the things on the road don't harm what's on the other side of it. And you can think of it the same way in your own life. So like the concept they talk about in the book is building in buffers, not only of space and time, but also just your boundaries in general, like building in that, you know, space for things to fail, not always assuming everything's going to work out perfectly fine for you. So how would you say that's impacted your real life, Joy?
Well, I thought it was great that you brought this situation into it because yesterday we tried to record this and we had all sorts of technical difficulties. And this chapter really talks a lot about the only thing that you can expect is the unexpected. And so building in that buffer to your life where you're not feeling completely stressed out. Like we want to post this on a Friday. So if we would have left it till like Thursday afternoon and we would have had no time to build in that buffer, we wouldn't have had a buffer. And so then it would have been stressful, or we would have had to push the date back. And so just trying to record on a Monday, but that didn't work. Now recording on a Tuesday, it just kind of lifts that stress a little and makes you really feel like you still are somewhat in control of the situation and not just taken away by things that are happening to you.
For sure. I think that for me, like I'm particularly bad at assuming that things are going to take a certain amount of time when really they're going to take this much longer. And I've had that my entire life. I think it's partly because I have ADHD tendencies myself. So I have a little bit of time blindness. Luckily, I think I'm also very effective under pressure because having had time blindness for my entire life has led me to like be able to do things in a compressed amount of time. The book also talks about that idea, right? Of like any project, like a gas expanding to fill the amount of time you have to do it in. And so that concept of like starting early, what do they call that again? Like time fallacy or something?
Yes.
In the book?
Yes, I think so.
They have a planning fallacy, right? Where we assume things are going to be, you know, something's going to take 20 minutes, but really it's going to take like 30 or 40. Something's going to take like 2 days of planning or 2 days of execution. And it's really going to take like a week. He suggests building in a buffer of 50%, which seems huge at the beginning. And honestly, nowadays for big projects, I just build in a double buffer, like of like 100%. I'm like, because things go wrong. And like now there's more people at play in my life than just me. It's not like me in college where
right.
I could handle a compressed amount of time and handle my own variables. It's like all my children and my husband and his work schedule and all of the other things that happen, like hurricanes and quarantines. And, you know, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So.
And I think once you've done a few house projects or any sort of project where you allot a certain amount of money, you get to the end of that project and you realize that buffer, because they suggest that with health projects. And so you realize that buffer is super important because, and true, every time you amount a certain a certain amount of money, it's always going to be like, I don't know, not quite double, but very close to that. So the 50% buffer is so smart.
Exactly. And every time you think you're going to need like 18 knobs, you're going to need 19. Just buy the 19th one. Like that's a home improvement tip. If you ever are confused about the number, or even if you know the number, buy an extra one. You can return it later. Like that is building in. Like, so that's that idea, right, of preparing for every kind of eventuality. They talk about that trip to Antarctica too, with the two explorers, you know, Amundsen and someone else who had a great name, like Falcon Scott, who you kind of think would win, but like dies on the way because he didn't prepare for anything. And the Amundsen prepares for like everything and had 3 times the amount of food and like 4 times the amount of thermometers and made it. So yeah, just prepare. In terms of homeschooling, I would say that this is why I do a lot more reverse planning than forward planning. Like I forward plan loosely, like by week or by month. I'm like, in this general time frame, I should like to complete this. But I mean, man, like my first year homeschooling, like I had like, on this day we shall do. And like I planned the entire year, Joy. I didn't even do like 4 weeks. I was like, I got this. I'm just gonna do, this is gonna be our year. And like that fell apart like by like 3 days in.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that beautiful planner was just like, it was a disaster. I had so many flags for all the places I was in it. Yep. I really suggest if you're a new homeschooler, especially, don't do that to yourself. Like try to give yourself some grace early, you know, like loosely plan if you want to be strict. Plan maybe like a week at a time or like 2, not the entire year.
Yes, that is so important because I think everybody does it, but it is so important not to do that, to plan your whole year, because the second you get behind, it creates that stress. So the next part is talking about subtract, and that's removing more obstacles in your path. And I loved this chapter for the slowest hiker reference, and it was talking about what are the obstacles in between you and getting done what you want to get done. And so then you identify what's between you and getting that thing done, and that is your slowest hiker. It can be a person, it can be motivation, it can be a lot of different things. They list those out in the book, which is another plug for getting the book because there's so much more information than what we're actually talking about. But I love that concept of thinking about like what you want to do and getting it done, because I struggle with this all the time when I have a list that's a mile long, and it just thinking about it in those terms, like what is between me and getting the things that have been on my list for 3 weeks done. And even if it's motivation, like just allowing yourself to understand that about where you're at right there, I think that can propel us forward. And maybe just say, you know what, motivation is not coming right now, so I'm going to pare it down to like one thing. Even if I get one thing done, at least something's getting done on the list. And I really like that. So how does that play out for you, Tanya?
Yeah, I actually love the name he gave it, you know, like finding your Herbie, because the slowest hiker in his story is given the hypothetical name Herbie. Your name is Herbie, I'm sorry about that. But like, you know, and he puts the slowest hiker at the front. Initially, he was having the faster hikers go first and the slower hikers go in the back, but he couldn't keep track of both of them in this Cub Scout group or something. And so then he put the fastest hiker in the front, but then everybody kind of, you couldn't like, everybody was walking at different speeds. But if you put the slowest hiker in the front, then everyone kind of falls in line. And then if you improve the slowest hiker, like that obstacle, like if you work on that thing, everything else starts moving faster. So all the things you already have in place can like work better on a machinery, you know, course, or I don't know what you would call that, a machinery run. Yeah. And that concept really made sense to me because sometimes in homeschooling, especially, you'll have like this one thing that trips you up, like whether it's like that transition from like breakfast to like getting to the schoolroom, or whether it's like someone just lagging over math, like that one kid who's like making it like a thing for everybody else, you know, like whatever that is, like identify that stop in your day, you know, the thing that pushes back against you. And sometimes it's that you wake up after the kids. You know, sometimes it's something simple like that. Like you wake up and now you're grumpy because, you know, or
Yep.
people woke you up, or you have a child staring you in the face like 7 in the morning. And like, that's how you wake up every day. Like whatever your Herbie is, I think it's important to like identify that stop and like work on that. Like make that your project for like the month. Make only that your project and see how everything else sort of like rolls better.
Yes.
Because I think, yeah, like sometimes we're too hard on ourselves. We think everything's falling apart or everything's not working when really it's just like one or two things. So like getting a real idea of what those are and fixing that can make the rest of it roll in.
Yep. Well, and I love how the last page of that chapter talked about that a lot of times it is due to lack of planning, like not having the time to plan. He even mentions like a story about him and his wife was raising small kids, and she just felt like constantly just kind of spinning her wheels. And so they identified it as she didn't have time to like go somewhere and think and plan out her week and just kind of try and get a grasp on what was happening in their lives. And so they built in that space, however you want to do that. I mean, I actually had the same issue when I had little kids because it's so constant. And so like Sunday nights, I would just go to Barnes and Noble or somewhere, and I would just sit with my planner and kind of plan out the week and think about it. And that was so helpful. Did you ever do anything like that?
I never got a chance because back then my husband used to take call. But, you know, like I think what changed for me was waking up before the kids, like making that a real like priority in my life. And I mean like waking up like 2 hours before they wake up so that I can have like a leisurely time to like put on my sunscreen and read my books and make my bed. And so by the time someone sees me, I've already had like a good amount of me time. And I feel like my day has been about more than just being a mom. Like for me, that was really, really important to get my head on straight so that I could be gracious with my kids. And that really began with that self-respect for myself, you know, like
yes, 100%.
Just taking care of, like protecting the asset, like what we talked about before.
Yes.
It's really about that. I mean,
right. And being true to who you are. And if you don't have enough time during the day to even think two thoughts together, then you don't have the time to think about yourself and what you might need to succeed.
For sure. So the next section they talk about within the execute chapter is progress. And basically they talk about starting small and like celebrating your small wins and having visual charts. And this is really relevant to homeschooling. So how would you say that you like folded this chapter into your life?
You know, at first I was trying to make one list for everything and like chores and school and the whole bit. And now I realize like we need parts to our day. So when we get up, we have like our little chore chart. It's very simple, but it just kind of helps keep kids on track. We used to do the little pictures when they were little, but now they can actually read it. And now it includes things like, you know, put on your deodorant or whatever. So I really like having a little chore chart that the kids can work on as I'm working on my morning chores. And then we have a school list. And some of my kids really thrive off of a list. All of them use one, but some of them thrive more off of that. And it kind of encourages them along their school day. But it helps me to see and be able to very quickly run through like, have you done this, this, and this, you know, especially as they get older and can kind of do things on their own. So I think just helping them, I don't have rewards for those charts, but I definitely have, I feel like they feel like, okay, we've gotten these things done. We're able to move on to the next thing. And that just, it helps us all around. Like we've really fallen into a groove during the school year of like, this is kind of our before school routine. This is our during school routine. And then after school, we don't really have a routine, and that's awesome. And they really look forward to that too. So I feel like that has been super helpful at making us successful in our homeschool. I've done different chore charts or different, not chore charts, but different little prizes for them for doing certain things throughout the day, especially attitudes. Like when you have a good attitude, when you do this, this, and this, you get to pick something out of the prize, you know, bucket or whatever. And that was helpful, especially when they were younger. And I'll be honest, sometimes I bring it back when we've really struggled. But those kind of things help help my kids. Now, for me, I actually have my own little small wins. So if I get through a morning of school and I've like, not lost my temper or things like that, I will go and grab myself a coffee or do something. And it just kind of makes me look forward to something. And that's really helpful in a homeschool day, because I feel like a lot of times they can just all look the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's a really good idea. I've never thought about giving myself little like rewards, but I should. I think I would respond really well to that.
Well, because you do the bracelet things, right?
I do the bracelet things. I'm not wearing them today. My daughter was like, "Where are your earrings?" I was like, "I forgot everything today." But normally I wear these jelly bangles, and I start off with them in one hand, and every time something good happens with my kids, like I used to do it with like, whether I did something bad or I like had a meltdown or something, I would like use it as a tracker of my own behavior. But then I shifted it completely, and every time something good happens, period, like I move it over, like a moment that I think is good, whether I'm like happy about how they've like folded their socks, or someone gives me a hug in the morning, and my bracelets keep moving back and forth, and that's such a good like physical, tangible reminder of how many good things happen during a day. Like it just helps me to not dwell in melancholy, because I have a tendency to do that. And so, like I think that if you are that type of person, giving yourself some little cue of like the good things is really, really helpful. Like there's that app that you can download, the Orange Rhino app, and it's like you track how long it's been since you yelled at your kids. I fail at that miserably. But she has a thing where you're supposed to put like orange rhinos everywhere. And that's like a visual cue to you, like don't yell. And to me, the bracelets are my visual cue to like just appreciate the good things, like all those little good things that build up. So I have like 20 bracelets, and they keep moving back and forth. Like it's amazing when you see it that way. Like there might have been 2 really bad things that happened during the day, but there was like 40 incredibly nice things.
Yes.
So.
It's such a great way to be intentional. I love that you do that.
Yeah. And I would say another thing that this chapter talks about is making routines easy. So you were saying like, with the charts and stuff, like the chart isn't so much like a tracker for like giving a reward, right? It's like making something easier for them, And for me, like we have this resistance to charts in our household because my kids don't like charts. Though they were very, very helpful when they were small, and I had like pictorial charts. And if you want some, like just email me at contact@project-happy-home, because I have a nice picture chart for a girl and a boy for a morning routine and a nighttime routine. It's all on one page. And that was really helpful for getting them going with that. My kids don't need it anymore, but they know what to do in the morning. They know what to do at night. Like they know. And the chart really helped them. Yes. I was thinking this year though, because I do think a list is helpful at marks throughout the day. I was thinking about making a placemat and having it laminated, like a big one, like a 17 by whatever, and taking it to Office Depot or something, and just having like a path. So like if you've gotten to lunch, these things have been done. And then by the time you get to dinner, these things have been done. Just so when they sit down, they can be like, oh, lunch, all of this should have been done. Oh, dinner, all of this should have been done, just so they can see.
That's really cool.
The location makes it easy, right? Because you are going to see your placemat when you sit down. So I was just going to leave it at the island, just keep it there. It's no reward. It's no one's checking it. It's just for you to like stay accountable to yourself.
When they're younger, it's really hard to have a routine. I mean, at least it was for me. Maybe that's not true for everyone. But as they've gotten older, it's just, it's really hard not to have a routine, I feel like. Sometimes it's nice to mix it up, but for the most part, so kids know, like, my boys really love video games. So it's not that they're waking up every day and saying, when can we play? When can we play? Like they know if they get their school done, they can play at 4 o'clock, that kind of a thing. So it takes a lot more, it's like making that decision once, so you don't have to like make the decision or say it a million times throughout your day. And so I think that is so key for homeschoolers to have a routine of some kind. It doesn't have to be super structured. I think we hear routine and we think, oh gosh, it's like time blocking. There's like something to do every second of the day. I don't think that's necessarily what they're saying, is just the same flow throughout your day. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really helpful. Like, I automate our weeks by every kid having 2 days of the week that's theirs, and it just cycles by age. So, my eldest starts on Sunday, the middle child is on Monday, the next one's on Tuesday, and then my eldest child has Wednesday again, and then Saturday is a free-for-all. But basically on every day, they know they're responsible for their laundry that day. They're the first picker, which means they get to choose like the TV show we might watch, or the car song in the, in the car, or the podcast or whatever. They get to choose, but they also get to be first helper that day, which means that if I need extra help with something that's not their general chore, like they're on call for me. And that's fine because they know it's their day, and they also get the good stuff, but it's automated. So I don't have to say like, there is no discussion like, oh, like so-and-so, like, like didn't do it for a long time. It doesn't matter. Like, it's your day. And that's all I say. If anybody has any kind of issue with anything, I'm like, it's your day. And I do that with the good stuff and the bad stuff. So like, if somebody wants to watch, The Floor is Lava, and somebody else wants to watch, there's a new sugar show where people build like sugar desserts. And like, I'm like, it's your day. Like, it's this person's day, it's their choice, and that's it. And there doesn't have to be this perpetual, ongoing, repetitive, like, argument about responsibilities and like privileges. It is what it is.
Yes.
And I also like that it automates like a lot of your household chores automatically, like laundry. Like, I know the kids are getting their laundry done once a week because they did it on their day. Like, it's as simple as that. So, that kind of stuff really helps.
Yes. Did I tell you I actually implemented that in my house? But we have after dinner helpers, and I was thinking, oh yeah, Tanya has her kid has her kids like rotate through the day or through the days of the week. And so I did that, but it's my after dinner helpers. And so Ruben gets Monday, and he was like, hey, you get to come help me with dinner. We're still working on it. We're still making it a habit, but it is so great. I love that idea so much. So I was like, I'm going to implement that in some way, shape, or form. And I love that this chapter points out that they actually, to quote it, it says, changing even the simplest, tiniest habit is amazingly, disturbingly hard. I felt like that just gave so much life.
I underlined that too.
Yes. I was like, yes, thank you. Thank you for showing me that it is really, really hard, kind of admitting that, because it is hard. Even like waking up before your kids, it's hard, it's not easy.
Yeah, it took a while. I mean, honestly, like I developed, I would say, one habit like in 2018, and that was waking up before my kids. Like, that was the habit I developed, the one thing that succeeded, that became a consistent habit. And then I would say the next year, my one habit was making my bed. Like, that was my one habit, like making it like the moment I got out of it, And I think sometimes people think that they're going to implement like all of this greatness, and like by June we're going to be good to go, like for the rest of your life. And that's just not the way it is. I definitely thought that when I was growing up. I thought at 24 my life would be like wrapped up in a neat bow, and like I would be this perfect version of a human being in a perfect house with perfect children and a perfect marriage.
Right.
None of those things happened. I think I met my husband, but I don't think we had any plans to get married at that point. There were no children. I mean, I think that when we become homeschool moms, we have the same idea, right? That like, especially moms like us who like read the books and do the research, we're like, oh, how beautiful. Right. Look at this beautiful morning basket concept. Like, and like
by osmosis.
I know. Like, I am going to read like the diluted version of Charlotte Mason, and I'm going to get it. Like, it's all going to be super. I'm going to read the core, and it's just going to be, and none of that happens. And I think sometimes when we all talk about these books and talk about habit formation, people hear like all of these things that have taken years to develop, and think, okay, I'm going to do this in a couple of weeks. And just know that none of us have it down. Like, everything's ongoing and everything keeps changing because your kids keep getting older, your life changes. Like, give yourself grace. This is my point with this. Like, don't think that you're going to read this book and like in 3 months, you're just going to be this person who's saying no to everything, who's got your ducks in a row.
Nope, it's not going to happen. Yeah. Well, and I thought another interesting point that he brought up was that every habit is, there's like a cue or a routine or a reward that's kind of like tied to it. And I thought that was so interesting, especially because all summer, I've been like walking, and then I water my plants. And the days that I don't walk, my poor plants don't get watered because it's like connected, there's a cue there. And when the cue is gone, it flies out of my mind, like unless I have it written down somewhere. And I find that fascinating because it's just interesting how your brain works and how those things are tied together.
Yeah, I think what I like, have you read that book by James Clear, the Habit book?
The Seven
Habits, or is it the Power of Habit? I don't know.
Oh, I've read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I think. Is that a different
Oh, that's
one?
by Cook, right?
That's right. Yep. No, I haven't read that one.
We should do the other one, the one by James Clear, which, yes, we should do. It's a good book. That's what that quote comes from. And like, I mean, that concept of like, the whole habit building section.
Yes, the power of habit. There we go.
The power of habit. Yeah. So I've listened to that one on Audible, and I want to get that one the same way that happened for me with this book, because it really does build on these little things. Like, we can hear those easy little phrases, like it takes 21 days to build a habit, blah, blah, and do nothing with that information. But he really pieces it out in like how to make that habit easy, how to track that you're actually getting to that habit. And I would say one thing about habits is that we also have negative ones that are similarly associated with that same cue. And I would say one of my negative habits, all my friends know, Joy knows, like my thing is messes. Like I have a thing about mess. Like I have plenty of mess in my room. I'm looking around. My mess is not the problem. My mess is like Lego mess and sock mess and random messes that make no sense to me.
Yes.
And one of my habits had become like to go into the kids' rooms to read to them at night. And then I would like have a little meltdown about the mess, and then we'd clean up and then read. And it sort of made that time not as nice as it used to be. So then I just changed my cue, and I told my husband, I was like, you handle the nighttime good nights there. I will take the children in our bedroom and read to them. And that way I divorce that cue, from that thing. And sometimes I think we need to do that for self-care and just to be our best selves, like recognize your trigger and your cue and like divorce it. And now that I've done that for a couple like months, it's easier for me to go in the room because it's been a few months since I've had that like meltdown. So now I can go in and be like, oh, you still have a mess. Great. Like, and like it's really good to like give yourself some room. And that goes back to what we were talking before, that buffer as moms. Sometimes the input is just too much. Yeah. Like you don't have a chance to catch your breath and like reset yourself.
Yes.
So give that to yourself as well. When you notice your bad habits, like give yourself space from them instead of always trying to like improve yourself,
Right. I think that is completely spot on. Yes. It also talks about mixing up your routines a little bit in here, and starting with one change in your daily or weekly routine. And I think we kind of covered that, but that is truly how you have to start it out. Like you just can't change it all overnight. And they talk about how routines are actually very deep and emotional things. And I don't think I'd ever read that before. And I was like, that's very true, like very true. So
there was something I underlined in that section, and it said that you should create routines that enshrine the essential. And I love that expression, instead of routines that are just things you think should happen in a certain way, like make routines that enshrine the essential, like figure out again what your core values are. What are you trying to get to with this routine? Like one of my core values is like tidiness. Like it is like having like a calm and like, put back home, like, and that routines, like when I build them, I should build them to honor that. Not just for the sake of like having a perfect house or whatever. It should get you to your value, not just randomly like what you think you should be doing.
Excellent. Yes, excellent point. Yeah, because it's like a lot of times I will look at myself and be like, well, I need to change, or I just need to get over it. But again and again, I don't get over it. And so looking at how you can change it in your habit and your daily life is, that's really, really important. And I will say one of the biggest things in this chapter was get the future out of your head. For me, like I am that person who looks forward. What was the thing in this book? I think it was an example in this book where it said that somebody had been looking forward to riding a ride, or maybe I was listening to this. Anyways, I can't remember where I heard it, but somebody was riding or looking forward to this new ride opening. They looked forward to it for like a year, and then they're finally on the ride, and they're like talking to the person who they went with to ride this ride about the next ride they're going to ride, because they're like just constantly skipping ahead, you know? And I realized, I think it was actually the Enneagram, and that was totally like my personality on the Enneagram. So it makes it really hard for me to not to like enjoy the present. And so this really spoke to me. I was like, yes, get the future out of your head. Just enjoy the now. That's why I like your bracelets so much, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have that problem too, even though I'm a very different Enneagram than you. Joy's like a
Yes.
7 and I'm like a 4.
But I think they get actually confused sometimes. Like some people will
Yeah.
see people as a 4 or a 7, and it's so I think I've heard that.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, I think, head thought going on in both
Yeah.
groups. And so there's a lot of living in like potentialities as opposed to like reality. Like, you know, one in the more, I think, happy way and one in the more melancholy way.
Yes.
But yeah, so they had these two words that they talked about in that chapter, the chronos and kairos. And chronos is this idea of like chronological time, you know, first this, then that. And kairos is this idea of time as in the moment, you know, like, so that idea of like trying to be more kairos, like in the moment and like really seeing what's here. So in terms of thinking like an essentialist, even though there is a lot in this book about planning ahead and like building buffer and all of that, much more so, it's like automating your life so that you no longer have to like be so wedded to a plan. You know, it's so that all of these things become part of who you are, like saying the graceful no, planning for like catastrophes, like knowing that things might not going wrong, knowing that things might not go right and like being okay with that, you know, and being like ready for things to shift and change, and that incorporating that flexibility with clear boundaries, I think, is what this book is about, you know?
Yeah. Yes.
So,
well, and allowing yourself to think about the future and to make those decisions for the future so you don't then have to kind of feel like you're putting out fires all day because you haven't made those decisions prior to living it out. And I really, really like that. That appeals to me a lot.
yeah. That's why, like, when I read this book, like, I thought it was more about, like, I don't know what I thought it was about, but I thought it was more just about simplification.
Yeah.
But it's really not. Like, it's about finding your core values. Like, it's really about making your life like automated to honor yourself, you know, and who your family is and who your values are. Like, it's so that those day-to-day decisions, that decision fatigue sort of minimizes, and like you can be in the moment more because you're not afraid of what might happen or thinking about what just happened. You're just kind of there, you know, in your happy boundaries.
Yep. Well, I love this this last chapter talks about the be, like just kind of what we were just discussing, like how do you just be in the moment, or how do you be in this life? And I really like that. So it says, as these ideas become emotionally true, they take on the power to change you. And I think that just follows along with everything when we're talking about routines and habits and just changing our mindset. It does, it changes you. I feel like I've definitely been changed reading this book, just my thought process, the filter that I put everything through. I just feel like there's so much more of a clear vision for my life, and then when things come in, I don't feel so flustered by them. It just seems to be a little more clear. How would you say that it's changed you?
I would totally, I mean, I think it's the same way. It's this idea of not being so wedded to things unfolding the way I imagine it in my head, and instead kind of like preparing for how I would like it to be, but also like really acknowledging that if I don't do X, Y, and Z ahead of time, like if I don't say the no, if I don't prepare a routine, like that this won't happen. And then it's just angst awaiting me, you know? I also think another concept in the book that helped me was this idea that what will really matter to me? Like, will this really matter to me in like 2 or 3 years? You know? And that helps me with figuring out what's essential as well. You know, like even little things like classes my kids want to take, or, you know, parties my friends want me to go to, or whatever, these planning things, these commitments we make. Like, I really try to think, like, is this going to be something that matters to me in like a few years? Because if it's not, then it's definitely not essential to me, right? It's just not. You know, like, I mean, that boils down to curricula, that boils down to classes, that boils down to even like a worksheet page. You know, like, do I need them to do this? Like, or do I not? Like, it's fine. You know, like even when you're in a power struggle with a kid, like over one thing, Like, is this comment that they make, or is this like power struggle going to matter to me in a year or two or not? And if it's not, then really move forward from that, like break yourself free of that like emotional attachment to like every single problem in your life.
Right.
I think that's a big thing for this book, like
Yes.
in every moment, come back to your core values and,
Yes.
let the rest of it go.
Right.
So.
Well, and even like the worksheet thing you're talking about, like, is it worth it to, maybe break this relationship because you're just struggling and fighting together? Is this one worksheet worth it? Or is this something that can definitely be, removed or done some other way? That's the struggle I think I have, like, on applying this book on a daily basis, because it's sometimes so hard for me especially when you have your curriculum laid out and you need to do, all of these things. It's really hard for me to just say, you know what, I can tell he is getting frustrated or she's getting frustrated, and now I need to just take a step back, and this will be fine if we don't do this week, like, because I want to check the boxes, like I want to make everything happen. And so I think on a daily basis, it's really hard for me to find what's essential, especially going through a curriculum the first time,
For sure. I think having those minimum criteria, laying it out there is really helpful. And I actually haven't done that for curricula in a written form. Like, I have it kind of in my head. So there's someone I follow on Instagram that I really respect, and she has it laid out like in blocks. Like, she has her 6 blocks on a page, and she has for resources, for curricula, for classes, and she just has her 3 minimum criteria and her 3 like, extreme criteria. And it's just written out. Like, they're just 6 sentences, really. But I want to do something similar because I think having it written down gives you so much more accountability for what you're really doing. And I think for homeschool in particular, like where we continuously see like new things and new opportunities and classes, and now with quarantine, we have so many online opportunities, and everyone's like, oh, why aren't we learning X, Y, and Z? I think that, it's overwhelming if you have to like figure out your criteria every time. Absolutely. As opposed to just seeing it. So that's one of my goals from this book, is to like put things down on paper in my planner. So it's just there every single year, and I just go forth from there.
I love that. Well, in wrapping this up, I think the end of this book kind of pointed out 3 things, and the essentialist lifestyle can bring more clarity, more control, and more joy in the journey. And isn't that just like the perfect wrap up of like what we've been talking about?
It's perfect for your channel title.
Yeah, joyful journey. Oh my gosh, yes. I don't even remember how I picked that, but I will say that is still truly like what I aspire to, and it is probably one of the hardest things when you homeschool, because it's just like the daily grind, and you forget so easily that you do want to delight in your kids, and you want to have a joyful, like a joy-filled time with them, and that can just be really hard when it's day after day after day. So this was fantastic. Do you have any closing thoughts? We should do this again.
I don't. I think that, I think one of the things that I loved about talking about it with you is because we both try really hard and fail often. And I can say that as your good friend, like, I think that trying is not the same as success, certainly, but it is very important, and the more efficient and effective we can make our trying, the better. So I think this book gave me that, like the ability to really like focus and hone my trying. Like, I think we'll always be trying. There is no perfect end, but like it really does give you direction for like, what are you trying to achieve? Like, it makes you accountable to like, why are you doing this? You know? And I think that was my biggest takeaway from the book. It'll definitely be a book that I keep rereading. Like, I'll keep reading what I've underlined, just to keep my like mindset like as an essentialist mindset. Like, it's very easy to slip back into all the things.
Yes, especially, and we had talked about this a little bit, that some people definitely are more comfortable with their no, and they're more comfortable with just knowing their kind of their bandwidth, so to speak. But I feel like if you struggle with that, this is a really great book. But even if you are pretty easy at saying no to things, if it comes pretty easily for you, there's still so much in this book, like we talked about, like just becoming an essentialist and what that all means. Because I think everybody struggles with that to some degree or another. And when it's constantly changing in your life, like homeschooling is not going to be my life forever, you know? And so, and you've had office experience, you've had homeschool experience, like you've had the gamut so far. Who knows where you'll end up, you know? So I just think this is a great book to kind of reconsider every year, and when life changes, it's a really great book for helping make that a smoother transition. So
yeah, I think it's talked about mostly in business circles, but I think it has great application for moms. Like really. So whether you homeschool or not.
Yeah, it's true. Very true. All right. Well, this was
great. Yes. This was super fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing it with me, but we should do the next book.
We should. What was it? Something about habit?
Was it The Power of Habit? Am I making that up?
It was. I did.
Clear Habits? Was it?
What was it? The Power of Habit, I think. Yes, we should definitely do that again sometime. So stay tuned. But thanks for joining us today, everyone.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was
Hopefully
fun.
this works out. And you guys, if you have any questions, leave them down in our comment boxes down below, because, you know, we're happy to answer them.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, you have a lovely essentialist day, Tanya.
You too. You too. I wish you success.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye.